Hello! Today, we are going to explore how to find a steady center of growth in a rapidly shifting economic environment. We will find these answers through the dramatic turning points of South Korea's industrial history. Volatility is like a wave that always threatens to overwhelm us, but if we learn the skill of riding that wave, it becomes the very engine that propels us higher. Korea's economic growth wasn't just luck. It was the result of grit and strategy that identified the essence of growth even in impossible situations. I hope this 20-minute journey makes your economic perspective more resilient. Shall we look back at the path we've walked? Let's look at the next screen. This is our roadmap for today. In part 1, we will cover the birth of the heavy and chemical industries, where we built ships and produced steel from barren land. Part 2 will examine the leap into precision technology, semiconductors, automobiles, and the transformation from wigs to biomedicine. In part 3, we'll highlight innovations in engineering and the shift in lifestyle that bloomed even during crises. Finally, in part 4, we will synthesize these historical lessons into economic wisdom and principles for sustainable growth. This isn't just a record of the past, it's a living guide for your life today. Let's start with our first story. In the early 1970s, Korea had no technology, no money, and not even a dock to build a ship. Chung Ju-young, the founder of Hyundai Group, visited Barclays Bank in the UK to borrow funds. This is where the famous turtle ship banknote episode occurred. He pulled out a 501 bill and showed the picture of the turtle ship, saying, "We are a nation that built ironclad ships in the 1500s, 300 years before the UK." This wasn't just a bluff, it was a strategic audacity rooted in a firm belief in latent potential. He secured the loan and, incredibly, won an order for two 260,000-ton tankers before the shipyard was even built. This is the spirit of a first mover creating something from nothing. This heat moved directly into the steel industry. Continuing on the next slide. If shipbuilding is the vessel, steel is the rice of industry that feeds it. When the construction of POSCO began in the late 1960s, international skepticism was high. People asked, how can an agricultural country build a steel mill? However, President Park Tae-jun issued a grim ultimatum. Since this mill was being built with the blood money of our ancestors, compensation funds from Japan, failure was not an option. He told his staff that if they failed, they should all turn right and jump into the sea. That desperate commitment birthed a world-class steel mill that became the backbone of Korean manufacturing. It shows that planting seeds of growth requires an uncompromising sense of mission. Now let's see what precision technologies bloomed on this foundation. In 1983, Chairman Lee Byung-chul of Samsung declared that Korea, then a country selling wigs and shoes, would enter the high-tech semiconductor business. This was the Tokyo Declaration. The world laughed, but Samsung converted a small 2.5-story house in Gihong into a lab. Engineers worked day and night in dust-free suits while using primitive restrooms. Their sacrifice led to the development of the 64K DRAM in just 6 months. The ability to predict structural changes and bet big when others say no is what built the IT powerhouse we see today. Technology didn't stop there. It began to industrialize our dexterity itself. Let's move to the next slide. Did you know that Korea's main export in the 60s and 70s was wigs? It accounted for over 10% of exports. Over time, that same meticulous hand-eye coordination used by wig workers evolved into semiconductor assembly and now biopharmaceutical contract manufacturing, CMO. When Samsung Biologics and Celltrion built world-scale plants, experts were skeptical. Yet, we proved we had the world's best production capacity. This suggests that while the shell of an industry changes, the underlying competency is inherited. This inheritance is also evident in the automobile industry. In the early 70s, Hyundai decided to stop just assembling foreign parts and create an original model. Lacking specialized technology, they modified press machines used for making kitchen pots to stamp out car bodies. Through these tearful efforts, the Pony, Korea's first proprietary model, was born in 1975. Ignoring the ridicule from Japanese competitors, the Pony's first export of 5 units to Ecuador opened the door to becoming one of the world's top 3 automakers. It's a product of the sheer will to use whatever resources are available to create something original. But this manufacturing strength would face its greatest test in 1997. The 1997 IMF crisis shook the very foundation of the Korean economy. As traditional giants collapsed, the government went all in on an invisible infrastructure, high-speed internet. Unemployed workers began opening PC bangs, internet cafes, as a means of survival. These cafes became a, quote, giant laboratory, where the entire nation experienced the world's fastest internet. On this soil, first-generation ventures like Naver and Kakao grew, allowing Korea to pivot from a manufacturing-centered nation to a digital economy. It was a brilliant moment for Korea's unique resilience. Now let's turn our eyes back to the high-tech manufacturing floor. In the early 2000s, Korean shipyards lacked enough docks, water basins, to handle a flood of orders. Hyundai Heavy Industries proposed a crazy idea. Let's build the ship on land and push it into the sea. European and Japanese engineers laughed, saying the ship would break. However, Korean engineers used giant airbags and special rails to successfully launch a tanker the size of 3 soccer fields built on land. This innovative method exploded productivity and allowed Korea to dominate the global market. It shows that a shift in perspective is what creates an economic gap. Such innovation also occurred in the food industry. In the early 1960s, ramen was introduced as a solution to the national food shortage. It started with a $50,000 loan for machinery. Though the industry nearly collapsed during the beef tallow scandal, Korean companies used that crisis to upgrade their quality control to world-class levels. As a result, ramen, once a hunger relief crop, is now a symbol of K-food found in convenience stores worldwide. It is a victory of entrepreneurial spirit that met crisis with transparency and quality. Now our focus shifts from the factory to the quality of life. In the past, the Korean economy was obsessed only with exports and factories. But as income rose, so did the desire for quality of life. The transformation of Nanjido and other landfills into eco-parks and leisure spaces is definitive proof of this shift. This spatial regeneration technology is now evolving into a new export industry called smart cities. We can see how the rediscovery of value creates economic added value. If you look at the next screen, we can see the overall trajectory. Let's summarize these 9 scenes. From labor-intensive wigs to shipbuilding and steel built on audacity. From semiconductors and cars won through desperate struggle to the IT infrastructure and K-food that turned crises into opportunities. This entire journey has been a process of shifting the center of growth without stopping in the face of volatility. We are no longer just a country that makes things. We are a country that creates value and exports culture. Now, what is the practical economic wisdom we should take from this hot history? We will wrap this up in part 4. What is the common thread in these stories? It's fundamental grit. This is the first lesson I want to emphasize as your economic mentor. It's not just being reckless. It's a confidence based on reading the flow of history and your own data. The turtleship banknote and the right-face spirit were possible because they never lost their center of growth amidst extreme volatility. The same applies to your asset management or career design. Rather than being swayed by market noise, focus on your fundamental value. Then, volatility becomes an opportunity, not a risk. The second lesson is adaptive innovation. Just as hand skills for wigs were pivoted to biomedicine, you must flexibly transform your core strengths to match the times. Like the ventures that bloomed on the IT infrastructure, you must detect changes in infrastructure earlier than others and think about what to build on top of them. Sustainable growth is like flowing water, not something stagnant. Is your economic portfolio being flexibly rebalanced to match the changing era? Continuing to the next slide. Now, look to the future. As seen in the Nanjido case, future industries will focus not on technology itself, but on how much it enriches human life. High-value industries combining service, leisure, health, and environment are our next frontier. If you are looking for investment opportunities, don't just look for good tech. Look for those who innovate lifestyles with that tech. As Korean industrial history proves, we created a new grammar every time we faced a crisis, and now we are in a position to sell that grammar to the world. Our 20 minutes have flown by. The evolution of Korea's industrial structure was ultimately a story of people who turned the impossible into the possible. My final question to you today is this. In an economic environment full of volatility, what is the center that will support you? Take the audacity and adaptability of our predecessors as your own weapon. With the mindset that there are trials but no failures, I hope you write your own history of growth. This concludes the lecture. Thank you for listening.